Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
My name is Peter. I'm an alcoholic. A two-fisted drinker. One of them's coffee, the other's water, okay? I bet you're wondering why I've called you all here today. I always have a funny time. Something always sort of goes with me whenever I hear anybody say we confine our discussion to problems of alcoholism and alcohol. Because I know for myself that after I was able to put down the drink and get about the business of living, I discovered that I was faced with life. And it seems like it's possible to say when you say problems of alcohol and confine your discussion, that means you can't talk about anybody else or your job or anything else. And in fact, there are people who think that. I go to a meeting that I like a great deal in Venice on Sunday mornings. And it seems to be understood that all of life's problems are appropriate to a discussion of sobriety. I used to wonder about these meetings. I would go to meetings. I got sober in New York for the most part. And I used to wonder, these guys would go, I've been around a few 24 hours, and I know some things. The door swings both ways. And to the newcomers, I want to say, don't drink and keep coming back. Thanks for letting me share. And thanks for sharing at depth that way. Appreciate the real meaty resonance, the way you threw yourself in there without any reservations. I don't want what those people have, okay? That's what it comes down to, I used to call this stuff Cracker Barrel sobriety. People don't know what Cracker Barrels are, and it's because I'm getting old. Now I just call it old fart sobriety. I'm glad I'm here. So's your wife! I don't want what they have either, except that they're sober. God bless them. It's not my job to take care of anybody else's recovery, thank God. I don't have to, it's, my own has been more than a handful for me, thanks very much. I was thinking about what I was going to say, and I realized there's sort of several lines that sort of run along parallel tracks, and in some ways they don't connect, except sort of like, I don't know if any of you have seen those, the timeline of history books, and they show a date, and then they show a date on the left, and music, art, government, philosophy, religion, and those, and it's. In some ways, they're parallel, and it's really interesting to find that, for instance, the Declaration of Independence was being written just about the time Bach died. So, I see. Okay, I find that stuff interesting anyway. But the point being that these things, it's just coincidental. It's like doesn't seem to have much to do with anything, one with the other. My alcohol story is kind of simple and straight ahead. I used to love what this one guy said. I called him John from Queens. He said, my story's a lot like yours. He said, I drank too much, I fell down, I couldn't get up without help. I go, it's my story. It's just that simple. There never was a time when I couldn't drink. I was always allowed to have wine at the, with the parents, and as far as I know, I was able to drink a little if that's what I wanted it for. On the other hand, I was not aware of the disease or the syndrome of alcoholism until I was in my mid-30s. Although I have a friend who remembers personality changes in my 20s. So, but I don't remember them. I don't remember, I only had one blackout that I can place. Sure, there were others. And in fact, when I listen to some of your stories, I go, gee, I must be a real high-bottom drunk. I gave a talk, shared once, and some guy afterwards said, Jesus, he said, I drank in quarts of malt liquor what you drank in 10-ounce cans of lager. And I thought, I'd go, wow, And to me, that seems like an awful lot. What I drank doesn't seem like an awful lot. But when I tell civilians, to use an expression, when I tell the non-combatants what I drank, they go, God. And what it came to was 5 to 9 cans of beer a day toward the end. I was going with a lady friend in recovery who drank 2 quarts of vodka a day. And it makes me, I go, well, maybe I'm not an alcoholic after all. Except that, from about the time that I began to become aware that I was having some trouble with alcohol, until the time that I was able to come in, which was a matter of 3 to 5 years, depending on exactly how you want. During that time, I began to watch myself. I began to notice how many times I'd planned to have 2 beers and went to bed with the spins under the influence of 9, wondering how did I get there? I began to notice the number of times that I had to apologize each morning for the behaviors of the night before. I began to notice, whether I meant to or not, how many times I went to bed with the spins, and debating with myself, was I going to try to fall asleep and behind all this, or was I just going to go into the bathroom and stick my finger down my throat? And I did that a lot. And I had, this one's kind of interesting. My wife my then wife, said to me, she had 2 ways of telling me about my alcohol use. One was, she said at one point, your drinking is damaging our life together. And I said, you're right. I can tell. You're right. I see that. The other way that she said was, you're drunk. To which I replied with a few closely reasoned discussions of her housekeeping, which I thought was perfectly appropriate at the time. It just seemed like the thing to do. I was teaching school at the time and taking kids on field trips. I took kids to the ballpark once and had a lot of beer at the ballpark and was driving back with my head out the window so that I'd stay, so that I wouldn't, to keep myself as clear-headed as possible. Not things I'm proud of, as you can imagine. I'm just, enormously grateful that I didn't cause more of the obvious kinds of damage, car killing people in car wrecks. I mean, how many times have we heard stories of people who wake up from blackouts charged with vehicular manslaughter? And that never happened to me. Thank God for small favors. The damage I did do, I have only the vaguest ways of assessing. I have no way of knowing for sure. I know that my daughter has a terrible time with relationships, my adult daughter, and for a long time was involved with one alcoholic after another. And, I don't want to say that's exactly the damage I caused, but there certainly is a connection between who I was when she was growing up and who she is now. My son, my enormously talented son, won't practice his craft. He's kind of, closed in on himself, and he's a great guy. Okay, there's lots of ways in which he's okay just the same, but I see that he's cramped in his soul, and I know that comes from the ways that I treated him and his mother when he was growing up. My best efforts at amends in those cases, after doing my best to sort things out in practical terms, having done that, the best I know how to do is to remain as sober as I can, and to grow and become as expansive in my own life as possible. If I was a bad example to him as a kid, I hope that I can be a better example to him as he's growing up to be, as he is now, a young man. So I was teaching school for a while, and then I got an offer to go on the road. I'm an entertainer. You may have heard that. I may have said Peter Tork from Venice, he's an entertainer. I got a chance to go on the road, and well, let me tell you a little bit about before that, because I was in the hospital. I thought I wasn't listen, everybody I know that has ever come anywhere near this, any alcoholic, every alcoholic I've ever heard of, at one time or another has defined alcoholism so as to carefully exclude themselves. I can't be one because and I did that. I saw on television some fictional thing about a guy who was deprived of his drink and screaming and crying and begging and pleading. I said, I don't do that. Therefore, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't need a drink. If I have to go to the hospital, or when I went to jail, I didn't have withdrawal symptoms. Why did I go to jail? Dope, okay. Little $3 worth of hashish cost me 3 months in a federal pen. Now that seems awfully unfair. Did to me too. I learned my lesson. It was something about consciousness and being aware of what's in your pocket when you come back across the border from Mexico. So I came back from the hospital at one point, and my wife said, this is a great opportunity to cut back on your drinking. I said, I'll make it 4 beers. She said 3. I said, okay. And I would go out to the store and buy a 6-pack of beer and drink 3 beers like that. And then I would spend the rest of the night not drinking. That's what I did for the rest of the night. It was my proactive behavior. I would hear the bottles of beer, the cans of beer in the refrigerator calling, come drink me. I don't have to. Okay, cutting out to the road job. I got a job to go on the road. I went out on the road. And boy, was I grateful. I could drink as much as I wanted then. Except that what I found out was that as an entertainer, I couldn't drink much before shows. I could drink 1 drink before each of 2 shows. We do 2 shows a night, drink 1, have 1 drink, do the show, have another drink, do the show. And of course, I would reward myself afterwards for being such a good guy by getting shit-faced afterwards. And I would crawl into the motel room, just dive onto the bed, wake up way too early to get back in the van to head out. And for the first time in my life, this much coffee in the morning did not make me even. Even after this much coffee, I still had to wait for hours to clear up. In fact, just about the time we pulled into the next gig, I'd be okay, shovel equipment in, 1 drink before each show, like a good little boy. I'm okay. And I did that for a long time. It feels like, anyway. It was probably only a couple of months, 3 months. And the road dropped me off in New York City. I'd been living here in Venice at the time. The road dropped me off in New York City, and I thought, this must be where God means me to be. And I outstayed my welcome at the really was down to the end. I thought I needed to be in New York, and I overstayed my welcome at the last place that would have me short of my parents. And one day, I looked at a can of beer in my hands and I had a shock. What I realized was that I hadn't, quote, asked for it. Up till then, as far as I knew, every single time that I had a beer, I had said, gee, a beer would be great right now, or I think I'll have a beer, or hey, I have an idea. I'll have a beer. And this one time I suddenly saw that I had had no mental construction of any kind, that I had grabbed a beer absolutely automatically. This funny picture came to mind once. It was like one of those Saturday morning cartoons, not like the cartoons they have nowadays, Ren and Stimpy and those wild guys, but those old-fashioned cartoons where our hero, Superdog, is under the influence of the evil space wizard flying around in a saucer orbiting above Earth. And the evil wizard alien has got our hero in his hypno ray. And our hero has spirals for eyes. And the evil alien is pulling levers and cackling gleefully. And on the TV screen, we see our hero, Superdog, taking himself to the refrigerator, opening up, grab a can of beer, and opening it, and pouring it down his throat. And our evil alien is, now I've got him. He'll have to drink. And I was our hero with spiral eyes, helping himself to beer without a thought, completely under the influence of something else. I've heard this before, not too often, not too lately, but I've heard this in several different orders, but the one that makes sense to me is that the man takes the drink takes the man, the drink takes the drink. And it got to that point. I was just a vehicle for alcoholism's will. I was a servant of alcoholism. This is a great Dylan song, because you're going to have to serve somebody. And it's, a little fundamentalist for my taste. I'm not, but the point is really there. There really is no such thing as neutral in this thing. If you're not working towards recovery or the equivalent, if you're not working towards the higher good, you are going to work for the lower evil. You cannot help it. There is no standing still. I don't know why, but it's just a mechanical fact. It's like gravity. It's just one of those things that is. And I was in service to alcoholism. And I was nastier and meaner and cruder and all the time. It just got worse and worse and worse until I had this moment of revelation. And I came back to visit, and I hinged my quitting drinking on the plane flight. I said, I'm going to have some drinks on the plane, and then I'll quit when I land. So I'm one of the few people I know who actually had farewell drinks. I was actually able to have. I had 3 scotches and sodas. My wife said, you were so drunk when you got off the plane. 3, that's nothing. But maybe I was. What do I know? Of course, the altitude had something to do with that. So I landed in Southern California, and 3 days later, I went to my first meeting, which was Men's Stag up in Beverly Hills, Roxbury. And I began the process of recovery, of living a sober life. I have to say that I did not quit smoking pot at the time, at least not right away. For me, pot was my drug of choice. Booze was my Jones, to use the expression. I came in on the third tradition. The desire for membership is a desire to stop drinking. I desired to stop drinking, and I came in on that. And I went on like that for about 7 months. I also continued to snort cocaine. But in some ways, that wasn't such a big thing, because somewhere about 3 or 4, halfway in between this middle ground, this 7-month period, somebody said to me, "Do you have any coke?" And I knew that if I could give him what I had, I wouldn't have to do it anymore, and I did, and that was that. So that didn't seem like it was such a big thing, but for some reason, it was the pot. That was the thing that. And I finally hooked up with a guy I wanted to be my sponsor, and he said, "Well, I won't sponsor you if you keep on smoking pot." I said, "You don't have to quit today. You don't have to quit tomorrow." He said, "You can quit Tuesday." So Monday night, and my roommate had locked up the good stuff too. I thought, But I said, no, I better not. I've got this hinge, and if I take this hinge, I think I can swing with it, so to speak. Sorry. But if I don't know when I'm going to be able to come back in, to do this right. So I quit smoking. I smoked a lot that Monday night and called him up Tuesday morning. "It's your new sponsee." He said, "Good. You have a contract with me. You're not smoking pot, and if you do, you have to tell me." I said, "Right." And I haven't had to smoke pot or take a drink, or, I haven't willingly had any more alcohol than is in Grey Poupon mustard since that, which is January 13th, over 17 years ago, so whatever that is. And it's like Fidel Castro, when he came down from the mountains, having beaten that blackguard Batista. I mean, I know most people in this country think Castro's a villain, but at least Castro's military police force did not systematically rape the women folk in the countryside, so I think there's something to be said for that. Anyway, I didn't mean to get sidetracked on that. All I wanted to say was that when Fidel came out of the mountains, he was sitting on a tank. He had won. He had beaten Batista. Batista's forces had to leave Cuba. He said, "Now the revolution begins." And the only reason I say that is because it's just like that for me. When I got sober, when I quit drinking, then the stuff began. That's the beginning, It's like in the movies, that's the ending point. Start rolling the credits, the music swells up, everybody leaves. It's a feel-good movie. And what we get to see is that, then you begin to face the life. I began to face the life that I'd been avoiding all those years. After all, I didn't drink for no reason. I drank for a reason. I think that everybody grows up with two statements in their heads. One is true and the other's a lie. The true one is you can't do this without help. The lie is there's no help. You wake up with that one, you can't do this without help, and there is no help. What are you going to do but drink? You'd drink too if you had my problem. It's just the usual cry. And we, it turns out that we can do this with help, and that's the glory of recovery. And so that with the fellowship and the program, slowly the process begins. Now, can I ask for a show of hands? How many people under 5 years sober? Wow, I guess I won't talk about the later stuff. Sure I will. At 5 years, you get your brains back. Everybody goes, "Oh yeah!" Except that you have to use them. Oh shit! That's the downside. Nobody told me that. I'm telling you, I'm passing this along. They told me at 5 years you get your brains back. I said, oh boy, I can't wait. And in 5 years I got my brains back, and suddenly I was like doing things with them. I had to think, and I couldn't, and I hated it. I would rather not had them back if it meant that. Around 4 years in recovery, I found it necessary to go to another program. It turns out that in my particular case, I was visited by a demon of another 12-step color. And I now go to that program regularly, and I have regularly ever since. And I found it very helpful to go to a few others from time to time. I am an advocate of greater metropolitan recovery. We who live here within the city limits of AA do not realize that the influence of our disease stretches out over many different substances and behavior patterns. And in fact, if you're over 7 years sober and you're not in at least 3 programs, you're in denial. I hasten to add that particularly in the first and very much similarly to the second and third years, do nothing but stay sober. Spend all your energies. Everything goes on the shelf when you first. They told me when I first came in, everything goes on the shelf, and I did that, and I'm very grateful. I was very lucky in terms of my my financial situation. I didn't need to work very much, and I was able to go to a lot of meetings, and I did too, even before I got clean and dry, when I was still just alcohol-free, but still doing those other chemical substances. I went to a lot of meetings. I must have gone to 1,000 in my first year, which is not hard to do in New York City. I mean, there were days when I would wake up and go to the nooner and then walk uptown to the 4 o'clock meeting and come back down for back-to-back beginner and regular meetings in the regular evening, and then go to the midnight meeting and go home. That was my day. I mean, I would do that many days when I did that kind of thing. And I was just as happy as a clam. I tell you, I love this stuff, this recovery thing, the fellowship and the program and talking about the real things. You know, I just didn't believe that there was any place on earth where I could openly talk about the things that are taken for granted in these rooms. And I'm extremely grateful for the entire recovery fellowship process. I was in Greenwich Village in the early 60s, and it was a very exciting place to be. I came to Hollywood at a time when it was a very exciting place to be. And I went up to Marin County, and it was a wonderful, not exciting in that case, but very warm and inviting, and a wonderful place to be on that account. And then I came back down here, and that's about when my alcoholism began to take over, and it turned out not to be such an exciting place to be, wherever I was. Now I'm in recovery, and it's a very exciting place to be. You know, I've always wanted to be in the vanguard, in the forefront, you know, carrying the flag and singing La Marseillaise or some other fervent anthem. And I feel like I'm doing that here. I feel like I get to be that here. I get to be part of what some people have called the greatest social movement of the 20th century, the greatest social invention of it's, who knows, invention. I mean, I guess you have to say so. I think you have to say Bill Wilson invented this. But I mean, he didn't do it any more alone than we stay sober alone. But I think you have to give Bill Wilson personally a lot of credit for this. He learned a lot about the dangers. There was this, you've heard about the Washingtonians, a group that managed to stay sober pretty much on the same principles as we do. But this was in the 19th century. They decided they were going to get involved in abolition. And the political movement, the strains of the political movement broke them up. And however many people might have stayed sober if they'd stayed out of it, as noble a cause as I happen to believe that is, it was a outside issue, and it wrecked them, as it would us if we allowed ourselves to get involved in that on a group basis. It's absolutely all right, of course, for me to have my own political opinions. I'm rather to the left of Mao Zedong myself, and I met a guy who was somewhat to the right of Attila the Hun, and we had a quick, 3 words about, it was in the Oliver North days, and he said one thing about him, I said another, and we looked at each other and didn't say another word about it, and spent a very friendly afternoon at the meeting and afterwards, and he took me home, and it was very cordial and very easy, and we just knew damn good and well we couldn't talk about that stuff between us without just going completely gonzo. So we didn't, and we were able to maintain cordiality, which is, a remarkable thing, and I think in some ways part of that is the nuts. I'm going to start getting off into more sidetracks. I'm not going to go into that one. I did want to talk about a few other things. It is my considered opinion that every alcoholic is a codependent, And of course, you understand, everybody, right? These are my opinions. Nobody has to believe a thing I say. Nobody has to agree with a word. In fact, I hope you don't, but silently, because I have a date after this. I have to get out of here. I don't want to get hung up in anything too deep. I have come to the conclusion for myself, however, that all of the other 12-step programs I go to or have gone to, all of the other work I do, is all in the service of this one switch click thing that is the hinge point of my recovery. Like I said before, you're going to serve somebody to use the fundamentalist expression. You are either going to be working towards something that is growing and healthy, or you're going to be working for something that is unhealthy and shrinking. There really is no choice. You cannot remain neutral. I once heard somebody say, even if you're on the right track, if you're not moving, you're going to get run over. And that's pretty much the way I look at it. And it seems too bad that there's no way to opt out of this thing, but there isn't. It's incumbent upon you to pretty much. So given that fact, which is the better? Which is going to bring you and those around you more happiness? And if it brings those around you more happiness, they are going to be happier with you. And the result is, my kids, as damaged as they are, as I've said before, both love me, and I love them both very much, and that is absolutely and strictly a function of my recovery. I am engaged, no, that's not the right word. I'm involved in a relationship which in many ways is a first for me. I don't want to discourage anybody. 17 years and the man can't, form a long-standing permanent relationship, but I had a lot of stuff to get through. Some of us are sicker than others, and I think I qualify. I am one of those guys who just came in here with amazing baggage. And one of the things about it was that the way I was raised, I was raised in, and my brothers and sister, we were raised in a middle class, seemingly together home, and no discussion of anything wrong was allowed, basically. And the result is that everything that's wrong with the way I came to when I grew up and came to life, everything that's wrong with that is compounded by the fact that I have or had no way to talk about it. I did not suffer major physical abuse in my household. I got spanked once or twice when I was small. That's it. Not massive abuse by anybody's standards. I was not yelled at. But what did happen for me was that my parents, I think I was okay as long as I was just a generic kid. As soon as I was who I really am, they saw that as a challenge somehow or other. My father and I were jogging down the road one day, and he said, "You want to stop?" And I said, "No." He said, "So you want to race, huh?" Well, that stopped my process. I asked my mother once whether I said, it's a funny thing. I held up a teddy bear, and somehow I just had a teddy bear in my hand. I said, "This bear was damaged in the womb." I don't know where that came from. So following up logically, I asked my mother, I said, "Were you happy to know that you were pregnant with me?" And she said, "Oh, yes, my darling, you don't understand. It meant that I was an adult and my mother couldn't tell me what to do." Ah, you get it. See? My mother didn't get it. And she said this, Thursday. I said, "Oh, I'm so glad I was able to provide you with something." I was her little, embroidered patch. Adult goes on the shoulder. Sew it on. Look, Ma, look. And so you see, I was a ticket. I was a franchise. I was not a person. And I didn't have any way to deal with this. I didn't have any way to sink my teeth into it. This stuff requires language. There's no dealing with this stuff without language. It's the kind of creature we are. I think that's the way we're built. So I only say all of that just to say, maybe it won't take you 17 years before you get a handle on some of these other issues. And of course, now with 17 years and staring down the barrel of a relationship, oh, poor Peter. I can see some of you guys go, oh, and he's going, the thing about it is that the challenge is incredible. And of course, all of the relationships I was in where I just said, oh, well, this is only for a little while, or I don't really love you, or those kinds of, the ways that I distanced myself were all about not facing the stuff that I have to face now. And I didn't want to be in my parents' relationship. I didn't want what they had, okay, to use an expression. And I find that I am, I'm only confessing this so that I'll put it out in the open, because if I know this is the kind of thing that if I keep a secret, it'll just kill me. I'm finding that I'm treating my girlfriend the way my parents treated me, which is hideously. And I'm only aware of how hideous it is, and only aware of what my parents went through when they treated me this way by what I go through when I treat my girlfriend this way. Part of me, it's like I'm drawing lines in the sand, and she's wandering over them innocently enough. She just doesn't have any, she doesn't know that's what they're there for, is for me to be able to, aha, now I've got, there used to be this wonderful book. Yeah. There used to be this wonderful book called Games People Play. It's still around, I think, a guy named Eric Byrne. Games People Play, and it's all about tokens. It's ways that we avoid dealing in deep relationships. One of the games is Now I've Got You, You Son of a Bitch. And it's like, there's somebody says something, somebody does something, they step over a line you've drawn in the sand, and you are suddenly given the right to go off on them with as much venom as you've got at your command. And the worst part about it is that when I'm in the middle of the thing, I'm having a blast. And there's a sick part of me that is really thrilling to do this kind of stuff. And then I, observe the wreckage of my behavior afterwards. I go, Jesus Christ. What? Can I ever pick up the pieces of this stuff? So that's and now, that's the challenge of my life. Now, I know it doesn't sound like an issue in alcoholism on the face of it, but you can see that this is part of my growth, and that I have to keep growing in order to stay sober. And that's the final lesson, the final point of all of this stuff. I got sober in order to lead my life. I lead my life in order to stay sober. It's a wonderful combination, because the opposite was, the vicious circle that was dragging me down was also true. I got drunk in order to avoid facing my life, and I avoided facing my life in order to drink, basically. I mean, I avoided facing my life as well as I could. It was just, and the more I did, the more I drank, the more I avoided my life. I mean, the pressures of your life, the demands of life are going to build up on you. And the reason that a lot of this stuff is addictive is that you brush away some modest worry with a glass of something, and the next day that worry, Tuesday's worry, and then Thursday's worry comes in together. It takes 2 glasses of beer to shove off Tuesday's and Thursday's worry. Then comes Sunday's worry down the throat, and the other 2 haven't been taken care of. It takes 3 glasses of beer. And that's why it's cumulative, and that's why, addictive in the sense that I found my disease to be addictive. It was about fending off life. And the great, incredible blessing is that you do not get more than you can handle. Or to put it another way, your denial is still functioning. If it's too big, you don't know. But that's okay. Denial is a dirty word in this program, but it has its virtues. It has that virtue. It's another, so that you never get more than you can handle is just another way of saying that your denial is still working for you. Like I said, when I first came in, I was told put everything on the shelf, and I did, and I'm glad I did. What I had to deal with, I didn't take off the shelf. It jumped off the shelf and beat me up over the head with it, whatever the particular secondary issues were. What I call secondary issues. In fact, alcoholism is in some ways the surface issue. The other issues are the deeper issues. But be that as it may, it's about staying sober, because I can't begin to lead my life while I'm drinking the way I was drinking. And I couldn't stop drinking the way I was drinking. And I could see the whole vicious circle going on. And when now that I'm not drinking and I'm beginning to face my life, and it feels like I'm just beginning at some level. So it's a funny thing, a little sidetrack. All time is the same amount of time. This is the new physics, according to Peter T. And you can see it for yourself. You can see it for yourself. Somebody comes in, you say, how much time have you got? They say 3 weeks. You go, all right. Somebody comes in with 3 months. All right. 3 years. All right. 30 years. All right. Every amount of time is the same amount of time. Only 1 unit of time, then till now. That's from the time I got sober till now, 1 unit of time. Everybody's got that. Same amount of time, 1 unit, then till now. And I am, for better for worse, always at the frontier of my life. It's like there used to be maps where, they drew in everything that they knew there was about, and then when what they didn't know, they said, there's dragons over here. Here there be tigers, there dragons, don't go there. We don't have a map for it. You can't go where there isn't a map. And, and you go in there, and as far as the edge of the map, there's freeways, motorcycles, and then between the edge of the flash maps and the homemade maps, there's bike trails and footpaths. Then there's no map, and there are no trails, and it's just you and your machete. And you think you want to go this way, and you fight and fight and fight, and you get there, and you find, it's not what I wanted after all, and you have to go all the way back in some other path. And that's the way it happens at the edges. Up to the edges, there's freeways. There's no freeways there at the edges. And I'm at the edge, and I always have been, it seems, at the edge of my life. I recommend it. It's a lot of fun. There's some drawbacks to it, for sure. It's not always as comfortable as it could be. And I do not like seeing in myself my parents' insanity at 17 years recovery. I'm not happy about that a bit. I'm not happy about the ways I've treated my girlfriend. I hope never to do it again. I have little hope that I will not do that again. My hope is that I will never do it again as badly as I have. I think I may have some hope of that. I'm working on it. And aside from putting it out on the floor at meetings, I don't know what else to do about it. So I put it out on the floor at meetings. Because I've discovered that's how it works for me. It's always how it's been. I put my problems on the floor in discussion groups to the best of my ability. I don't have to get too specific. And for God's sakes, don't anybody confess to murder, okay? Because somebody recently did, and they're in the jail now. They counted on your anonymity, and they didn't get it. And I personally think it's a good thing. I mean, I think that you don't do that. But having said that, put on the floor everything that you dare to. And when you've done as much daring as you dared to do, dare a little bit more. What I discovered was that when I put things out on the floor, I began to get the answer back slowly, and kind of like out of the cloud, out of the mists, formed, like some cinematic effect, formed the answer. A lot of people came at me, some damn fools came at me talking about what they thought I needed to know. And, and it's like, thanks for sharing, and, but enough people came at me with little bits and pieces of what I found the truth to be, that sooner or later, my true answer would come. And it came from being as open as I could on the floors of the meetings at AA. And I recommend it very highly. It's the way it's worked for me. It's the only way it's worked for me. Not to say that I haven't done my step work, and that's really very highly recommended. It's a funny thing about not drinking, though. You see, when you start talking about recovery in these terms of like being on the frontiers of your life and going to the limits to the best of your ability and learning how to live in all of its manifestations, sobriety becomes a little like the king in chess, crucial but not very important. Most of us don't think about drinking too much per se, exactly. I haven't had a voice in my ear going, gee, a scotch would be great right now. I haven't had anything like that for years. I had a slip dream the other night. It was kind of scary, but I woke up and it was gone. And I need to hear it. I think slip dreams are about, wake up, pay attention, fool. So I guess I needed it, and I'm happy for any clue that I can get. Wherever they come from, I'm happy to get them. But having said that, I think that the important thing is growth, being at the frontier of your life, recovery in its larger sense, learning how to live with people, learning how to be a member of society, where this is a bridge back to life. This is not an island for us to hole up in and fortify. I was reading something in another line of recovery, where what this teacher type person was saying, most of us are defending some position. I am a good person. I am a person without bitterness. I am this kind of a person. I am that kind of a person. I'm a strong, or alternatively, I'm awful. I'm really grim. I'm disgusting. I'm such a lowlife. I'm such a loser. These are positions that we defend. And those positions are like secondary shells that we lay outside ourselves. They aren't who we are. Every one of us is good and awful, has moments of behaving well and behaving badly. The real question is, who are we underneath? Stripping away those shells, seeing them for the illusions that they are ultimately, or stripping them away is another way of saying the same thing. Discovering who this oneself is underneath it all is what this is really all about. In the Bible, it says, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and all will be added. And I think that it's exactly the same thing to say, don't drink, make meetings, and your life will begin to come together. John from Queens used to say, you come in here to get a job, you might get a job and you might not stay sober. You come in here to get a girlfriend or a boyfriend, you might get a relationship, you might not stay sober. You might come in here for fame and fortune, you might find it and you might not stay sober. So the overall recovery process, don't drink, make meetings, do your step work, talk to your sponsor, all those basic good things. Don't get hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Some of the slogans in New York City, they have the sign, think, 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 upside down so that you'll think. Let go and let God, easy does it, this too shall pass. All those, the serenity prayer, all these things that are sort of in the grab bag are really good things and important things. And what they're there for is to bring you back to life, to wake you up from your robot stage, and become supple human beings again. Wow. I noticed that I haven't said anything about a higher power in all of this stuff, but those of you who have been paying attention have heard that I've been talking about nothing else. So thank you very much. We appreciate it, and thanks for my sobriety.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious. Do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.